Hey guys, KIRI here with another review. This time I'll be reviewing the RKF Kamen Rider 01 HybridRise figure from Kamen Rider 01. This is a special Rider Cooks figure of Kamen Rider 01, which includes a base body and 5 sets of armor that will let him change between his 5 main forms. Now, this is not what I said I'd be reviewing next time in my last video, but I've changed around the order of things, or I've decided to change around the order of things, just to make the flow of the order of videos just go a little bit better than what I had before. So, with that being said, let's get started. First up, we'll take a look at the base body of the figure. This is basically the default form of 01 that we only see mid-transformation. The entire figure is cast in black plastic, with just a little bit of paint here and there. Specifically, here in the center of the 01 driver, as well as these red marks on the forearms. Now, there's a lot missing from the head, and that's mainly just to do with how the different faces go on. Though in the show there actually is a face underneath the masks that's kind of a mechanical cyborg looking face. You got the chest, which has some holes for where you'll be attaching the chest parts. You got the shoulders. The body coming down to the legs and the feet, as well as the details on the back. Now like this, we can also get into the articulation. It's a little bit more limited compared to some of the other RKF figures. There's a ball joint for the head, but it's rather limited. Mostly it goes up and down, or rather left and right. A bit down, but there's not really much room for it to go up. There's a ball joint in the shoulder socket, as well as a swivel and rotation. Have a bicep swivel, single joint elbows, wrist swivel, the typical RKF ab crunch or torso joint. Legs go forward and back, in and out. Have a thigh swivel, single joint knees, and ball joint ankles. So aside from the head, it's pretty standard as far as an RKF goes.
Jump to the sky turns to a rider kick.
So first off, we'll attach the rising hopper armor. Starting with the calves, we're going to take these arm pieces here and insert these tabs into these slots right here on the side. And for the thighs, tab is right here. We'll go into this slot on the front here. Then, using these 3 tabs, plug in the chest armor. And finally, we'll just wedge the face on like so. And here we have Kamen Rider 01 Rising Hopper. Now this is the form we've already looked at since there is a separate Rising Hopper figure. So instead of going over the details again, I'll instead bring in the previous Rising Hopper figure so we can compare them. Starting from the top, the details of the head are just about the same. Key differences being that there's a somewhat a different shade of color used with the eyes, as well as the fact that on the normal figure, the yellow color is done with paint, whereas with the HybridRise figure, it's done in plastic. Moving down to the chest, it's a bit more detailed on the normal figure. As you can see, there are some spots of black paint missing, and all of the red here is missing from the HybridRise figure, whereas it's painted here on the normal version. While the red stripes here are painted in on both, the HybridRise is missing the silver striping over here and on the neck. The belts are actually about the same in terms of the detail, as well as the area that's painted, so that's pretty good. And getting down to the thigh armor, it's a little bit interesting because there should probably be some kind of gaps here to open up and reveal the black underneath, as well as how the armor here on the HybridRise sphere seems to wrap around the thighs a little bit more than the original RKF does. And the same applies to the calf armor down here, where it seems like there should probably be some gaps right here to reveal more of the black underneath. And additionally, there is no paint here on the feet. The profiles are about the same, though obviously you do have more head articulation in the base sphere, which I really do wonder why they couldn't have applied here. I'd say the one big advantage that the HybridRise sphere has over the normal one is the use of yellow. The color here is a lot more accurate to what we see in the show, and this is basically the same color that's used on the 01 driver, as you can see. So it definitely stands out more, and I do wish that for the normal RKF, they could have used a color of paint that would have more matched this. In terms of overall detail, the normal RKF definitely wins, though this does a fairly decent job. Next, we'll switch in the flying Falcon pieces. So first, we'll strip off the rising hopper pieces from 01. And then attach these ones. So first, we'll start with the thigh armor, which goes on here. And here. And for whatever reason, the one that goes on the right thigh has a bit of a hard time staying in. So I try to kind of wedge it in place by basically getting in there and then trying to use the space here to make it at least somewhat hold in place. Let's try to straighten that out. Attach the chest armor. And then the face mask. And here we have Kamen Rider 01 Flying Falcon. So taking a look at the armor, first we have the new face mask, which changes the eye color from red to green. Has a nice falcon-like appearance. If we look at the side head, we can see one of the interesting things about the form changes for 01, which is that they basically combine with Rising Hopper, and the Rising Hopper armor pieces remaneuver themselves or reconfigure themselves to help create the forms. So as you can see, the two halves of the Rising Hopper face get shifted over to the sides to create these kind of antennae on the back. We can see the armor has a general feather-like appearance. You also see that bits of the chest armor go onto the shoulders here, And he's actually supposed to have a little bit of the chest armor also down below this, or at least a little bit of the Rising Hopper armor below this, though that's not replicated here. And then we have the thigh armor down here. And like I said, for whatever reason, this one piece of armor just doesn't have, or doesn't like to stay in very well. For the most part, the articulation is the same. The only difference is that because you have these pieces that extend out, you can't really move the arms forward very much, or you can't really rotate the shoulders forward. So your posing is now limited to making use of the rest of the joints. And one thing that's kind of interesting is that even though most of the armor is done using this pink plastic, which does match the color of the Flying Falcon PROGRISE key, the pink on the face is actually paint. That might come down to how there are a lot of different colors on it, as opposed to how there isn't as much on the rest of the armor.
Chomp through concrete.
Next, we'll switch in the biting shark parts. So, we'll remove the Flying Falcon pieces, and somehow I managed to actually get this piece to stick in properly. I'm not sure how I did, but I guess at least it can go in correctly. So then, we'll switch in the new calf armor. So you guys had on the wrong way, or oriented the wrong way. Though to be fair, the only way of actually seeing what goes where is actually via the box, as this doesn't come with any instruction booklet. And then for the first time we're going to attach on some forearm armor, which it seems I also had backwards. Oh, no I didn't. It's just a little tricky. Ah, right, it attaches at that point. You'll have to forgive me, folks. I haven't fiddled around with this all too much, so I don't remember how everything goes on. Got those there. And the chest armor. And then the face mask. And here we have Kamen Rider 01 Biting Shark. So, starting off from the head, we have the new face mask, which has a general shark-like appearance, with some side fins, gills, the top fin on the forehead, as well as a shark's jawline right here. Also changes the eye color to a nice metallic pink, and the Rising Hopper face halves now are flipped around to extend forward from the jaw. The main armor pieces are done in a nice turquoise color, matches up with the Biting Shark PROGRISE key. You got the chest armor and shoulders, which again have a lot of those nice gills, as well as on the calf armor. And then on the forearms, we have these kind of fin blades, which are made from pieces of the Rising Hopper chest armor. Again, the forward movement of the shoulders is limited by the chest armor. But in cases like this, you can basically make use of the rotation of the head and body to get them in some good poses. And that's the basic ideology for action poses with this figure, at least if you're using a form that isn't Rising Hopper. Next, we'll swap in the flaming tiger pieces. So, of course, we'll start by removing the biting shark pieces. So first we'll attach the thigh armor. Right there, and right there. Like that. Next we're actually going to swap out the hands. And so like any other RKF, we'll just take them out of the socket, like that. Then plug the new hands in, which are these red fists. Then we'll attach the forearm parts. Right here. And here. Then attach the chest armor. And the face mask. And here we have Kamen Rider 01 Flaming Tiger, which is my personal favorite out of 01's main 5 forms. So, starting with face, we now see the tiger design with the stripes running down the forehead and the mouth. We've got the cat-like ears here. And you can see that the eyes are now a metallic blue color. Getting down to the chest, got these nice flames which also look like they have tiger stripes in them. And there's a little bit of missing color in that behind these shoulder pads there should be some yellow, as that's where Rising Hopper's armor was moved to. And for the forearms, this is where we now have the Rising Hopper face halves, as well as these new red fists as I showed earlier, and more flame/stripe details. I'm pretty sure this form actually has the most pieces out of any of them, and definitely has a very cool and dynamic design. I think the colors overall work very well. And last but not least, we'll swap in the freezing bear pieces. So, you know the drill. First off, take off the previous form's parts and set them aside. First up, we'll switch in, or switch out, the red fists for these light blue ones. Just like so. Attach the armor to the forearms. You want to make sure that this piece is going upwards. Just plug those in on the sides of the forearms. Then we'll put on the chest armor. And the face mask. And here we have Kamen Rider 01 Freezing Bear. So starting off we have the head, and what you can see the general polar bear design, at least as far as the face shape and the ears. And once again, you can see the antennae of the rising hopper armor sticking out from here, though you can't see the rest of the face, as it's supposed to be under this armor. Then you have the armor, the chest armor and shoulders, which is meant to have an ice-like appearance, as well as on the forearms, plus the fists. Now out of the 5 forms here, also the eyes this time are metallic gold, Freezing Bear is the one that suffers the most, as the basic idea behind this design is that most of the armor is supposed to be like ice, and it's supposed to be a more clear kind of ice, which lets you see the rising hopper pieces underneath. Though we don't have the best view of it, take a look here on the box. You can somewhat see how there are some clear sections here on the armor, as well as on the face, which will let you see that armor underneath. And I'm guessing that it just wasn't in the budget to use any kind of clear parts within this figure, so it had to go for this solid color instead. It does get the outer details correct, but is unfortunately missing a lot of the inner details. And finally, in addition to the 5 forms you can make using the different armor sets, you can also mix and match pieces to make your own different combination. And so I'll just show the example that they have on the back of the box. So we'll use the Flaming Tiger face, the Rising Hopper chest, the Freezing Bear forearm pieces, the Flying Falcon thigh armor, and this time hopefully I can get on this one correctly without too much hassle. And the Biting Shark calf armor. Just like that. And so here we have a combination that makes use of at least one part from each of the different forms, and has all the spaces filled in. And of course, this is just one example. With this figure, you can mix and match as you please. And there we go. So overall, while this figure is good, it's also one that definitely works better in concept than it does in execution. On a conceptual level, this works great, because whenever you see 01 transformed, you can actually see the base body and then the different parts attaching to different points on his body, as well as how the armor pieces will move around to reconfigure themselves for the different forms. But it's within those armor pieces on this figure that we get most of the problems. While I managed to keep it to a minimum, the first thing that's at fault is that the armor pieces don't have the most secure connections. A lot of times they can pop out pretty easily even if you don't want them to, and as I showed, some pieces may have difficulty just fitting in the first place. So you kind of have to really fiddle with them quite a bit in order to make them stay. Second thing that is a bit of an issue is basically how they worked the chest arms for the other forms. I don't think it was the best idea to have the shoulder pieces be attached to the chest armor, because that limits the arm movements. And even though you can, if you're skilled enough, kind of work your way around that, I don't think that had to be that way. I think they could have and probably should have made it so that the shoulder pieces were separate and then you attach them onto the front of the shoulders. That way you could keep the looks of the forms, but still retain that same level of articulation that you get from the base figure and from Rising Hopper. Additionally, I do think that the articulation could have been a little bit better, especially in the head, because as you could see with my comparison, the normal RKF Rising Hopper has a great ball joint and great range of head articulation, but with this one, for some reason, it's a lot more limited, and I wonder if that's a budgetary issue or just something they didn't think of when designing this. It gets a lot of the details of the different forms right, though for some it does come at a cost, such as with Freezing Bear, but you can make all of the different forms, and you can mix and match, so this is definitely a recommendable figure, but it's not as good as it could be. That being said, this is nice if you just want a simple figure that can give you those 5 forms. I think that putting them together in one set was a much better idea than having a base form and then releasing the armor separately. So, overall, I can definitely recommend this. Next time, I'll be reviewing the Deluxe Shining Hopper PROGRISE key. So, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you're new and would like to see more, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. And for now, this is KIRI50, writing off.